welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'm discussing the 2021 horror Malignant, as directed by James Wan. With Malignant, Wan brings us a new, original, stand-alone story. Well, for now, he does have quite the habit of kind of setting up a franchise, doesn't he, you know? But this time around, within a new universe of suspense and terror, filled with many of his trademark shocks, revelations, and surprises. And just a few buckets of gore to kind of even things up. In the movie, we find Madison Lake Mitchell, as played by Annabelle Wallis, in an abusive relationship with her husband, Derek Mitchell, as played by Jake Abel, when after his latest attack, they are both subjected to a chilling and grisly home invasion. In the aftermath, Madison is joined by her sister, Sydney Lake, as played by Maddie Hasson, and together they become embroiled in something far more sinister and unexpected than any of them could have ever thought possible. As a string of gruesome murders occur, Madison seems to be at the centre of events, and it becomes up to her and Sydney in order to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle that seem to be kind of unfolding together before anybody else succumbs to the malevolent force that seemingly attached itself to Madison. So, with Malignant, I had heard some interesting stories about it when it first came out, and like always, a mixed bag, you know, with certain moments in particular that kind of won praise and certainly some kind of shock value, but nothing that gave the game away, which is a rare thing for a film like this. So I was kind of totally blindfolded going in with a sense of kind of tentative anticipation, which I think certainly heightened the experience and maybe just that little bit more extra jumpy. I must admit, I do enjoy a good James Wan horror. There's just something about his mix of storytelling, suspense and gore that yields a relatively entertaining result. Sort of like an adult Goosebumps, you know? And so I was kind of certainly psyched to take this next chapter in his point horror repertoire out for a spin. Malignant is certainly a fun time. It's definitely suspenseful and kind of carries quite an intriguing story that mixes a spook house vibe with a police procedural, refining much of Wan's style and visual perspective. To be fair, it does feel very reminiscent of many of his earlier movies. Almost a collection, a self-parody perhaps. It borrows from many that it almost feels like a self-fulfilling homage. There's certainly more than a passing influence, as elements from the likes of Saw, Insidious, and the Conjuring series are kind of glued together scene by scene. It really is a little bit of everything. I'm happy with the result, generic as it feels. Yes, a lot of the visuals and themes early on are completely reworked, almost indiscriminate from any of, the other horror in the same arena, but it's what the film then becomes that's so much more bizarre and twisted, and the spine-tingling journey that we've taken on to kind of get there. Regardless, his formula continues to work for me, and this movie and, this film is no different. I love its twists and its turns, its mystery, and ultimately what it all became. Certainly a macabre and distinct vision, not quite like anything I've really kind of seen before. I would say, unfortunately, that I think kind of once we've started to reveal the main elements of the story and CGI took over for the main antagonist, this is when the horror that was kind of initially set up so well was squandered somewhat. It had plenty of gore for sure, but it really kind of took the edge off. It wasn't quite as suspenseful or horrific. The weight of the movie to that point felt a little inconsequential as a result. Rather than terrifying, I felt relief. A sensation I wasn't really expecting, given I was on the edge of my seat during the setup. And that's a shame, as the CGI as a whole, especially kind of when we transition between realities, was actually pretty decent. It's definitely not one for the squeamish, that's a fact. And there are quite a few disturbing and upsetting scenes designed to shock and give us that kind of insight into the character's state of mind. There's a very depressing vibe, harrowing even, as we kind of build into the main elements of the story, certainly making for some very uncomfortable moments. The movie has a very creepy framework for sure, and a gruesome outlook, if I haven't said already. It lets you know that events unfolding are connected somehow, and it'll keep you guessing. But I have to be honest, although I got some elements in the right ballpark, and certainly I certainly wasn't ready or expecting how things actually turned out. One of the biggest shocks of all for me, it certainly caught me by surprise. So I definitely appreciated its ingenuity and originality in that respect. It certainly gave me shivers at the times, you know. I loved its bold, loud and often intrusive soundtrack too. Scored by Joseph Bishari, it sounded almost Saw-esque at times, although he didn't compose that. Definitely with a prominence throughout the movie and something I could certainly sink my teeth into. Building kind of just that right kind of atmosphere and hostility the film required. Overall, Wan has given us a pretty decent, fairly shocking home invasion cum ghost story, with a little bit of Saw thrown in for good measure. A spook house story with some gory and unflinching moments that definitely tries to get under your skin. It does borrow heavily from Wan's previous works, being yet another horror mixed with a detective angle, so it definitely feels at times like a retread of what we've been. But it was ingenious enough for me, and it certainly had an intriguing backstory that kind of developed, not just concentrating on the horror. There are a few shaky CGI moments, especially as we kind of head into that final act, which does deter from the overall terror and atmosphere of the movie. We still have buckets of blood, however, and the premise is definitely worth it in the end. Indeed, a pretty slick, intriguing modern horror that certainly had me hooked. Definitely a warped concept. Loved it. And that final act, CGI discounted, an absolute unrelenting onslaught and something that certainly caught me off guard. So, that brings me to the end of this movie. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do like. Please do hit that subscribe button for my movie reviews, trailer reactions and other movie related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst MovieTalk. Definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.